Today I'm going to be reading 𝐓𝐡𝐞𝐚, The Treasure Seekers. A Scottish dream come true. Colette placed the last clip in her hair and smiled in satisfaction. There, she squeaked. I'm ready. She went to join the Tia sisters in the room they had been sharing for a few weeks. But instead of finding her 4 best friends, she only found one. Where are the others? Colette asked Violet, who was happily stuffing a backpack with a blanket, a travel pillow, and a camera. Nikki's feeding the horses before we go, Violet explained. Pam is in the kitchen making sandwiches, and Paulina... Before Violet could finish her sentence, the door flew open and Paulina entered, a map in her paws. For our picnic, Miss Kerr suggested we take the trail into the woods a few miles from here, she announced, excitedly pointing to the spot on the map. She says there's a peaceful clearing with a lovely stream running through it. That sounds so beautiful, Colette said, sighing wistfully. She looked out of the window at the bright emerald green grass and the sheep, cows, and ponies that Nikki was feeding for the last time. I'm so sad to be leaving Scotland already. This vacation went by too quickly. You're right, Coco, Paulina agreed, but it's not over yet. Exactly, Violet added. Let's enjoy the days we have left. The friends smiled as they reflected on the wonderful vacation. It wasn't very long ago that Colette, Paulina, Violet, Nikki, and Pamela were at Mountford Academy thinking about how they would spend their summer, when Paulina found an ad that seemed perfect for them. Do you want a different kind of vacation? Scotland is waiting. Stay at an organic farm for free. In exchange, you'll help us take care of the garden and animals. The 2 sisters are excited by the idea of visiting a beautiful farm where they would learn to take care of sheep and horses. They immediately got in touch with Miss Kerr, the owner of the farm. Then they booked their flight from Whale Island, and in a short time found themselves driving through the green countryside on their way to Miss Kerr's farm. That's how their very special summer started. When the 2 sisters arrived at the farm, Miss Kerr greeted them warmly and made them feel right at home with some of her delicious shortbreads, Scottish butter cookies, and 𝐒𝐿, a traditional dessert made with raspberries, oats, honey, and cream. Taking care of that garden and the animals was, of course, work, but it was also fun. Nikki in particular had really taken to 2 of the ponies on the farm. Plus, the 5 friends rented a SUV and visited the surrounding areas where they explored breathtaking waterfalls, caves, bays, and castles. The vacation had gone by in a flash, and they were almost at the end. Miss Kerr had suggested that the mouses rest and visit all the things they haven't seen before they had to leave. So that day, the 2 sisters had organized a relaxing picnic, and now they couldn't wait for their adventure. We have enough sandwiches for a week, Pam exclaimed as she returned from the kitchen holding a basket of food, napkins, and utensils. And I've loaded the backpacks with everything we need, Violet said. Great, Colette exclaimed. Now let's get Nikki and go. A sudden storm. Half an hour later, Pam parked the SUV in a small parking lot at the edge of the woods. Here we are, Paulina exclaimed happily. The place Miss Kerr suggested is about a 10-minute hike down this trail. Pam looked at the trailhead confused. It looks like 3 different paths begin here, she pointed out. Did Miss Kerr mention which trail to take? Paulina scratched her head. I don't know, she said, perplexed. On the map, there's only one. Maybe they all lead to the same place. Maybe or maybe not, Colette said wisely. We'd better check. At that moment, a hiker approached and Colette flagged the mouse down. Excuse me, Colette asked politely, pointing to the map. But could you tell me what path we should take to get here? The hiker barely glanced at the map. Instead, she just looked at the sky and shook her head. It's not worth it, she said. Colette was surprised. According to Miss Care, the spot sounded like the perfect place. But why not? Colette replied. We heard it was a nice spot for a picnic. Suit yourself, the rodent replied brusquely. Take the first path on the left. Colette went back to her friends to tell them the mouse's answer. Maybe she just meant that there are better places around here, Nikki said with a shrug. There's only one way to find out, Pamela said confidently, and the 5 friends started down the trail. A short while later, they emerged from the woods in a beautiful clearing with a spectacular view of the mountains. Well, this place seems absolutely perfect to me, Colette exclaimed happily. There's so many flowers. And look at the sparkling, clear stream. I don't know what that mouse is talking about. Yes, but be careful not to fall in, Pam warned. The water will be cold. Paulina laid the blankets on the grass, and the 5 friends could finally relax and enjoy the marvelous view. Come on, let's take a photo, Colette proposed as she finished the last bite of a piece of the cake that Miss Care had packed them. Oh, I think we've taken enough photos on this trip, Colette said, and Violet said as she lay back on the blanket and closed her eyes. Right now, I just want to relax. But a moment later, Violet sat straight up on the blanket. Hey, she squeaked. Who splashed me with water? Nikki looked worriedly at the sky, which had suddenly gone dark. It wasn't us, Fee, she explained, pointing to the gray clouds thickening above them. It looks like it's about to storm. She had barely finished her sentence when there was a clap of thunder and thick sheets of rain began to fall. Let's go, Paulina yelled, quickly stuffing the blankets in the backpacks. She left one blanket out so she and her friends could shelter themselves from the rain. Hurry, Nikki said. Let's get back to the car. But suddenly she stopped. A single hiker had been walking near the stream, and Nikki saw him slip on the rocks. I'll be right back, she called to her friends. Then she pulled her hood over her head and scampered to the shore. There, a blonde mouse was sitting on the ground, holding his paw. What happened? Nikki asked. I hurt my ankle, he replied, his snout twisting in pain. Come on, lean on me, Nikki said as she helped him up. Ouch, he squeaked. I don't think I can walk. But we have to get out of the storm, Nikki insisted. Suddenly, Nikki remembered seeing a small stone building near the shore, not too far away. It was definitely closer than the car. She motioned to the 2 sisters to follow her there. A few minutes later, their fur soaked, Nikki and the hiker managed to make their way to the building's covered porch. Thanks, the ratlet said Nikki. Without your help, I never would have managed. My name is Boyd, and I live nearby. I went out for a walk, and when the storm came, I tried to hurry, but I slipped on the rocks. A soft voice behind them interrupted. You've all been thoughtless. Unexpected help. Colette turned toward the door. She had heard that voice before. It was the mouse she had asked for directions. The mouse looked at them sternly and repeated herself. You've all been thoughtless. It was clear a big storm was coming. Then she turned to 𝐒𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿. I tried to warn you. I'm sorry, I didn't understand you, 𝐒𝐿𝐿𝐿 said apologetically. We were not used to the weather here, so we didn't see the signs of the storm. Achoo! Nikki sneezed suddenly. It's my fault, Boyd chimed in. They stayed back to help me. The mouse noticed that Boyd was balancing on one paw to keep the injured one off the ground. Then, without another squeak, she gestured for all of them to come inside. You'll catch a cold out there, especially you two, she said to Nikki and Boyd. The group entered the house, which was incredibly warm and dry, thanks to the fire burning in a large stone fireplace. Their host headed to a corner of the big room, which was furnished with rustic wood furniture. Then she took a blanket out of a chest and gave it to Nikki before leading Boyd to a chair and to examine his ankle. Nikki wrapped herself in the blanket as her friends stood next to her. Paulina began to pet the cute dog that was curled on the thick carpet. Your ankle is swelling up quite a bit, their host said. A doctor should take a look at it. I should go home so my parents can take me to the hospital, Boyd said. I don't live far from here, but I don't know how I'll get there. That's no problem, Pam exclaimed. My friends and I will go get our car, and we'll take you home right away. But we won't all fit, Paulina pointed out. If you take Boyd, one of us will have to stay here. The host decided for them. She stays here, she declared, pointing to shivering Nikki, who was still wrapped in a blanket. I'll get her some dry clothes and a cup of hot tea. And I'll stay here with her, 𝐒𝐿𝐿𝐿 said. So Pam, Paulina, and Violet hurried to get the SUV so they can take Boyd home. Meanwhile, Nikki put on the dry clothes the woman had brought her, wide short pants, a pair of knee-length socks, and an argyle sweater. I wore those when I was your age, the older mouse said, smiling. They're a little outdated, but they suit you perfectly. Oh, they're perfect, Miss Beatrice, she said, introducing herself. Then she pointed to a bench in front of the crackling fireplace and added, have a seat and I'll make you some tea. Then she disappeared into the kitchen. Coco, what do you think of my look? Nikki joked, spinning around and posing like she was about to have her picture taken. 𝐒𝐿𝐿𝐿, her friend hadn't heard her because she was busy admiring the biggest decoration in the room, a tapestry hanging over the fireplace. The embroidery featured a huge, lush tree with deep roots and flowers, surrounded by a frame of leaves and flowers. This is such a beautiful design, Nikki exclaimed. Yes, it's really lovely, 𝐒𝐿𝐿 said in admiration. The leaves, trunk, and flowers are stitched in such detail. And the design is so balanced, Nikki said as she leaned close to the tapestry to get a better look. At that moment, Beatrice entered the room holding a tray with a teapot and teacups. What are you doing? She asked brusquely. The legend of the tapestry. Nikki stepped away from the tapestry. We were just admiring this beautiful piece, 𝐒𝐿𝐿 replied tentatively. Beatrice was quiet for a long moment. Then she sighed. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to be rude, she said. I'm afraid I'm not used to having guests. As you may have guessed, that isn't a simple tapestry. At that moment, Pam, Paulina, and Violet knocked on the door and entered. They had returned after taking Boyd home. "Make yourselves comfortable," Beatrice said. "Thank you, but we don't want to disturb you too much," Violet replied politely. Beatrice shook her head. "You're not disturbing me," she said, "and it's better if you wait here for a bit. The storm will stop soon." "But how do you know that?" Pam asked, surprised. The older mouse smiled. "Oh, I've always lived in this valley," she explained. "I know every sign of nature in this corner of the world. I just have to look at the color of the sky and the shape of the clouds, or smell the scent of the woods to know if it will rain or if it will be a cold winter. Nature talks to us, and I've been able to understand since I was a little mouselet. I use my senses. I look, I listen, I feel, and I smell." Colette nodded and looked more carefully around the room. She could see that it was full of signs of nature: vases of plants and greenery, pine cones decorating the stone fireplace, and of course the tapestry she had admired earlier. As she sat next to Nikki in front of the fireplace, happily sipping a cup of tea, Colette gathered her courage and asked Beatrice the question that was on her mind. "Can you tell us more about this fascinating tapestry?" she asked. Beatrice nodded. She sat in a rocking chair, petting her dog, who sat curled at her feet. "The tapestry belonged to my great-aunt," Beatrice began. "So it's a family heirloom," Nikki remarked. "Oh, it's much more than that," Beatrice replied. "That tapestry hides a true mystery." "A mystery?" Pam asked, intrigued. "What kind of mystery?" "Well, you notice the writing around the edges, right?" Beatrice noted. "It's a secret message that my great-aunt left to my grandmother Petra many years ago. No one has ever managed to decipher its true meaning." A clap of thunder rang out suddenly, and the 5 friends jumped. "It's a message that speaks of petals, of midnight, and of a mysterious hidden alabaster garden," Beatrice continued. "Supposedly a precious ancient treasure is buried there." "So it's like a fable?" Paulina asked. "It's a legend invented to intrigue the listener." "Yes, that's what everyone thinks," Beatrice replied, slowly sipping her tea. "Well, almost everyone." At that moment, a ray of sunshine came through the window. The dark clouds in the sky had disappeared, and the rain had stopped, leaving behind sparkling beads of water that glistened like jewels on the pine cones. Before the mouselets could say anything more, Beatrice stood up. "It's best if you go right now," she said abruptly. "It will start raining again soon." The 2 sisters were a bit surprised, but they nodded and quickly stood up. "Thank you again," Nikki said as they bid Beatrice farewell. "We will be back tomorrow to return your clothes." The 5 friends were quiet during their trip back to the farm. When they were about halfway there, the skies opened up and a light rain began to fall, just as Beatrice had predicted. An unfriendly visit. The next day, the mouselets woke up early. They wanted to help Miss Care pick the vegetables in the garden one last time before they returned the clothes to Beatrice. A few hours later, when Pam parked the SUV in front of Beatrice's house, the friends knew at once that something strange was going on. The door to the house was wide open, and another SUV was parked nearby. The Tia sisters exchanged glances and suddenly approached the kitchen window. The room was empty, but a few of the chairs had been knocked over, and a vase full of wildflowers that had been on the table lay smashed on the floor. "Oh no," Paulina gasped. "Something must have happened." "Let's look in the living room," Violet whispered, pointing to a window nearby. When they peered into the living room, the Tia sisters were shocked at what they saw. Beatrice was on her feet in the middle of the room, trying to fend off two intruders. A fourth mouse stood in a dark corner. Her snout was hidden by a pair of large sunglasses and a black hat. She was giving the intruders orders. The intruders grabbed at Beatrice suddenly, pinning her arms behind her back. There was no time to lose. The Tia sisters had to do something right away. "Pam, run to the SUV and start honking the horn," Violet ordered. "Let's try to scare them off. We'll go inside and free Beatrice." Pam ran to the SUV while Violet, Nikki, Paulina, and Colette burst into the house squeaking loudly. "Get your paws off her," Colette cried. "Leave her be." The three intruders looked at one another, stunned. "Where did they come from?" one of the big burly mice asked. The mysterious mouse in the black hat scowled. "I don't know, but these four won't ruin our plans," she snarled. Then she turned to one of the big mice. "Take care of them." But at that moment, Pam started to honk the horn. Beep, beep, beep. The three intruders jumped. Colette took advantage of their surprise. "Here comes our backup," she shouted loudly. "We're not alone." The mouse in the hat made an angry gesture and turned to her accomplices. "You take the tapestry," she barked at one of them. "Let's get out of here, quick." Before the two sisters could come up with a plan, the first mouse grabbed the tapestry from the wall, and the second one let go of Beatrice. As soon as her paws were free, Beatrice elbowed him in the side. "Ouch," she complained. "Stop whining and run," his sidekick said, dragging him out of the house. The three quickly reached their SUV and zoomed away, disappearing from the Tia sisters' sight as they looked on from the doorway. Then Colette, Violet, Paulina, and Nikki gathered around Beatrice. Paulina leaned down to pet and comfort the dog, who was still barking. "Are you okay?" Colette asked Beatrice, worried. "I'm okay," the elderly mouse squeaked softly, "but it's only because of you five. I don't know how to thank you." "I called the police," Pam said, rushing back into the house from the Tia sisters' SUV. "They'll be here shortly. Did they take anything?" "My tapestry," Beatrice replied, sighing heavily, "and I think I know why. Sit down and I'll tell you everything. I know now that I can trust you." The story of A.B. Lane. Beatrice sat down in the rocking chair, and the Tia sisters sat down around her, eager to find out more about the tapestry. "Yesterday I told you that the tapestry speaks of a treasure," Beatrice began, "and you believed it was a legend." Nikki and the others all nodded. "Well, it isn't just a legend," Beatrice continued. "The tapestry is really a map. It leads to treasure buried in the mysterious alabaster garden that a mouse named Aurora Beatrix Lane discovered during her travels around the world." "Who is Aurora Beatrix Lane?" Pamela asked. "I'm sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself," Beatrice said. "Let me start at the beginning." She stood up and opened a drawer, pulling out an envelope of old faded pictures. She handed one to Pamela. "This is Aurora Beatrix Lane," Beatrice said. The photo showed a young mouse standing next to a biplane. She had short, curly hair that stuck out from under a pilot's helmet, and she was smiling brightly. She wore a coat over a light-colored shirt, some knee pants, a pair of high boots, and a long scarf that fluttered around her neck. Nikki examined the photograph closely and then looked up at Beatrice. "She looks like you," she exclaimed. Beatrice smiled. "She was one of my grandmother Petra's 6 sisters," she explained. "I'm named after her. Beatrice is the Scottish version of Beatrix. My grandmother wanted me to be named in honor of her beloved missing sister." "Missing?" Colette asked, but her remark was drowned by her friend's chatter. "So she was a pilot?" Nikki asked, looking at the photo. "Yes, she was a pilot, a motorcyclist, and an archaeologist," Beatrice said with a nod. "But most of all, Aurora Beatrix Lane was a fearless explorer. My grandmother said when Aurora was born, the Lane family became decidedly more animated. Aurora was curious and fearless. She never missed an opportunity to run and play with other children, and even as a little mouselet, she would spend hours in her room looking at maps and atlases. Unfortunately, that disappointed her mother, my great-grandmother, who would have preferred that she be at home embroidering like the other mouselets her age." Beatrice stopped squeaking for a moment and smiled to herself as she remembered her grandmother's stories. Then she sighed and continued. "But Aurora wasn't like the others. Lace and fancy clothes didn't interest her. She was courageous and had a great love of adventure and mystery, so she convinced her mother to send her to England for college, where she could study her real passion, archaeology. It wasn't unusual for her to arrive at school wearing pants and riding a motorcycle. Have a look." Colette looked closely at the photo Beatrice showed them. "That must have been shocking to some at that time," she said. "Yes," Beatrice agreed. "Some mice certainly found Aurora unconventional, but she didn't mind. She was true to herself, and when a flight school opened near her house, she couldn't miss the opportunity. She signed up right away. Unfortunately, when the owners saw that she was female, they didn't take her seriously, so she jumped on her motorcycle and drove off, navigating on potholes and rocks and dodging trees and puddles. Then she drove back and gave the owners a direct order. Now I want you to teach me to fly as well as I can drive a motorcycle." A mouse quickly stepped forward and offered to be her flight instructor. His name was Robert. He was a young medic with passion for flying and delivering medicine all over the world. They grew close immediately, even if they were often apart while one of them was traveling. They sent each other long letters and tried to see each other as often as they could, no matter where in the world they happened to be. "What an adventurous and romantic life," Colette exclaimed, sighing. "Unfortunately, Aurora's life took a tragic turn," Beatrice continued sadly. The mouselets glanced at each other in surprise as Beatrice stood up and went to look out the window. Her shoulders slumped sadly. After a few moments, she turned to the 5 young mouselets and smiled once more. "You have been very patient in listening to my tale," she continued. "Now I'll tell you the rest of the story and the meaning behind the tapestry." Where Sweet Winds Blow. Beatrice sat down in her chair and continued the story, showing a new photograph. After getting her diploma and her pilot's license, Aurora collaborated with Jan von Clausewitz, her archaeology professor. Clausewitz was considered one of considered her one of his best students and a young talent in her field, so he often involved her in his excavations. Aurora was very passionate about that part of her life and traveled the world, helping the professor with his numerous discoveries. How exciting, Paulina commented. Who knows how many magnificent relics she unearthed? Many, I'm sure, Beatrice replied with a sigh. We just have no idea which ones they were. Aurora kept all her destinations a secret. She only went home once after her first trip. Do you mean she never saw her family again? Colette asked, stunned. Not exactly, Beatrice explained. You see, her sisters grew up and moved. My grandmother Petra married a Scottish man and came to live here in the Highlands, and the others settled in various parts of Europe and even South America. Aurora met up with them during her travels around the world, but I believe she intended to return home to stay only once she had finished her archaeology adventures. But that's not what happened, is it? Violet asked softly. It isn't, Beatrice replied, sadly shaking her head. After years of exploration, Aurora disappeared aboard her biplane under mysterious circumstances. Oh no, Paulina squeaked. But what happened to her? No one knows, Beatrice replied. Since Aurora never made her destination or her travel plans public, it was impossible to piece together her last location. But that's terrible, Colette cried out. Beatrice nodded. After the first of her trips, Aurora visited my grandmother and gave her a package. She asked her to protect it at all costs and told her never to show it to anyone. Was it the tapestry Violet guessed? Exactly, Beatrice confirmed. Aurora said it was a map capable of leading to a very precious treasure, but that it had to be kept a secret for a while. She warned my grandmother that someone dangerous would get his or her paws on it. She asked my grandmother to take care of it and to wait for her to return. Only then would Aurora use the map to bring to light the precious discovery she had made so she could share it with the world. Do you remember what was written on the tapestry, Nikki asked Beatrice. Of course, Beatrice replied. I memorized it when I was 5, before I learned to read. That's when my grandmother first told me Aurora's story. Beatrice closed her eyes and began to recite. In the land where sweet winds blow, follow the petals, what lies below. Remember, midnight comes along before the sun rises amid bird song. There you will find a priceless delight, an alabaster garden true and bright, created by one who was dear and true to the jewel of the palace, like me to you. The god is a friend with feet so deep in his arms, this precious gift will keep. When sweet winds petals dawn. This seems like a poem more than a treasure map, Pam exclaimed. Or maybe it's a riddle, Nikki added. I can't figure out whether the jewel of the palace is the priceless delight or the alabaster garden. Beatrice smiled. I know, she agreed sympathetically. I haven't been able to figure it out either. No one has. In the end, even my grandmother began to doubt the alabaster garden's existence. And what do you think? Violet asked. Well, I think the treasure exists, Beatrice said, and those mice who stole the tapestry today prove it. But the tapestry and the poem are true puzzles. Violet was quiet for a moment. Did those 3 mice take anything else? She asked thoughtfully. Beatrice shook her head. No, she replied. Then you're right, Violet concluded. The robbers came here with clear intentions. They wanted to steal the tapestry. But who else could have known Aurora's story? The 5 friends looked at Beatrice and at one another, baffled. I don't know, Beatrice admitted. Now you five should go. I've taken up too much of your time already. There's nothing more you can do, and the police will be here shortly. So the two sisters said goodbye to Beatrice with warm hugs. Then they returned to the farm. But they couldn't stop thinking about Aurora's story and the mysterious treasure. 5 friends, 1 idea. The next day was the last of the two sisters' vacation in Scotland. The trip had been amazing, but they were sad, and it wasn't just because they were reluctant to leave Miss Care and her wonderful farm. While they were having breakfast, Violet let out a big yawn. You know, last night I dreamed I was flying around the world on a big plane. She said it was exhilarating. I dreamed I was traveling by motorcycle while wearing a stylish red helmet. And in my dreams, I was exploring a South American forest where I found an incredible treasure. Pam added as she sipped her cup of tea. It was an enormous chest full of nothing but chocolate. The friends giggled at Pam's tale. Something in Aurora Beatrix Lane's story must have struck us, Paulina mused. Definitely, Nikki agreed. Aurora was resourceful and gutsy, just like us. And she loved to travel, just like we do, Violet added. It's too bad she never managed to fulfill all her dreams. And it's sad that the Alabaster Garden is destined to remain a mystery. The 5 friends all stopped eating at the same time. It was one of those moments when, without needing to speak, the 5 of them knew they had the same idea. Finally, Pam broke the silence. Are the rest of you thinking what I'm thinking? She asked. Let me guess, Colette began with a smile. Your thinking classes at Mouthford don't start right away, so we have time to help Beatrice figure out who stole the tapestry, Nikki continued, and help her find it, Paulina said. Don't forget the Alabaster Garden, Violet added. Maybe we can solve that mystery too. So we all agreed, Pam explained. We should postpone our return flights and start investigating. But where do we begin? Paulina asked. Well, the entire story revolves around one person, Violet said. Aurora Beatrix Lane, the others all held down. Violet nodded. I'll do some research on her, she said. Even if she didn't leave official records of her trips, maybe we can find other evidence. Did Beatrice mention the name of the college in England where Aurora studied? Paulina asked. She did, Nikki recalled. It was Girton College at the University of Cambridge. Fantastic, Pam exclaimed. All we need to do is pack our bags and go. Well, after we finish breakfast, of course. The 5 mice burst out laughing. They couldn't wait to start their next adventure.